know your name, I swear I do. It's on the tip of my tongue. Sorry, what did you say? I've known you for how long? Your face is so familiar, but no name comes to mind. Please, can you remind me if you'll be so kind? Staring out into space, asking God to hear my case. Trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last?
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I am your host and founder, Lori La Bey, and I'm also the daughter of a mother who had dementia for 30 years, and I'm thrilled to be here today. We're going to have a wonderful show with you. We are lucky enough to have Cameron Camp back, and his wife is joining him, Linda. They have written a wonderful book, and I'll get into that in just a minute. We always get new listeners, though, so I want to just tell people a little bit about Alzheimer's Speaks if you're new. Bottom line, we're an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. We also help passionate companies expand their brand footprint by leveraging our content to increase access to products, services, and tools so that they can be made available to those who are truly in need. And we also believe collaboration is the only way that we're going to win this battle against dementia. And I know that that's working thanks to each and every one of you. You see, your likes, your clicks, your share with your sphere of influence, be it Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or one of the so many other social media platforms disseminating information, has gotten us recognized by Oprah, by Maria Shriver and Dr. Oz. And I say that not to pat ourselves on the back, but to share those acknowledgments with our community here, because it wouldn't have happened without your support, your likes, and your shares. So thank you so much for being part of our community. I also like to always invite our audience to be one of our next guests. So if you have a topic of interest, just reach out to me and we'll chat and we'll see if we can get you scheduled. We believe in raising everyone's voice. So if you are living with dementia, if you are caring for a friend or a loved one, maybe you're a business professional, a researcher, an author, a movie director, a singer, a songwriter, we have a little bit of everybody on, as well as advocates. So we'd love to hear from you. I also want to just give a huge thank you to the people in Chesterton, Indiana. I was out there with their library system doing what they call community conversations, where I was able to screen the film His Neighbor Phil a few times, and then also talk with their nursing students in the community, which was just, it's always fun for me to do, and hopefully informative for them, giving them ideas. I will be heading down to Melbourne, Florida this week on Thursday, and I'll be down there. I don't think I come back till Monday. And then the end of the month, I will be out in Northwest, let's see, where the heck am I going? Northwest Rural Health Conference in Spokane, Washington, the 26th through the 28th. So if you're in those areas, come and see me. You can just go to alzheimersspeaks.com and check out more details on our homepage there. And let's go ahead and get started, and let me introduce our guests. We are lucky enough to have Cameron Camp back with us. He is a gerontologist and a psychologist who trains caregivers in the use of person-centered treatments for persons with dementia. And his wife, Linda, is also with us today, and she is a retired Montessori teacher with over 25 years of classroom experience working with young kids. And like I said, I'm really excited to have them both on. So welcome, Cameron. How are you today?
Doing just great. Thank you for having me today.
Well, wonderful. And thank you, Linda, for joining us today as well. I'm excited to talk with you and hear about your Montessori experience and how you are working that with the book in terms of helping people with dementia and teaching empathy and conflict resolution to people with dementia. So are you having a great day there, Linda?
I am. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity also.
Oh, good. Before I start with our line of questions, I always like to ask our guests, because it's good for our audience to know. And the question that I like to ask is, have you been personally touched by dementia within your own circle of friends or family? And Linda, I'll let you go first if you don't mind.
Yes, my mother actually has Alzheimer's disease. And she is in a facility in Texas, and I try and interact with her as much as I can, but getting down to Texas isn't always easy. But I do have siblings that are caring for my mother.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. And Cameron, how about you?
I've been working with people with dementia over 30 years professionally. But I've also had some very good friends who have had dementia. One, for example, had been a medical director at a long-term care community. And an MD, a very great man, a very good soul. He developed Alzheimer's disease. And when he did so, he had difficulty getting his physician to write a prescription for rehabilitation because of his diagnosis. And that was the moment for me when it got personal. You know, that's when I began to really think of this not simply in terms of work, but in terms of a mission. And Linda and I always say at this point in our lives, we don't have jobs anymore, we have a mission. And it's about changing the way people think about dementia, how dementia is treated, and about giving control back to persons with dementia of their lives, and really viewing this as a human rights issue.
Yep. Well, I'm right there with you on that one. It's interesting. In fact, today we did our dementia chats where I interview people with dementia, and we were going to talk about, what do they want people to know, the leaders and the emerging leaders to know. And we got off on a whole topic of what's a leader and who's an influencer, and we can't really even have that discussion until companies and society and communities decide how they're going to listen to one another. And so it was kind of interesting, but yeah, their voice definitely needs to be put to the forefront. Cameron, do you want to explain how you guys got this idea for the book?
Yeah, Linda and I were spending 8 weeks in Australia about 5 years ago. I had been involved with a research project on how to use Montessori activities as a way of engaging people with advanced dementia who also had high levels of agitation or aggression. And so we worked with researchers at Monash University there in Melbourne and with the Alzheimer's Australia group to create a resource called Relate, Motivate, and Appreciate. And we were brought over to take the training from this resource around the country. So Linda and I got to be in Melbourne and Tasmania and Sydney and Brisbane and Darwin and Adelaide and Perth and other places. And as part of that journey, where we sometimes worked with professional caregivers and many times with family members, we kept hearing about their challenges, especially in residential communities, of how do you get people with dementia to be able to resolve conflicts? How do you deal with things like bullying or taunting, especially if people have early stage dementia and they say they don't want to be around people who have more advanced dementia, how to deal with those things. And Linda looked at me and said, we need to write a book. And, this is what I've been dealing with in the classroom for decades. It's the same issues. These are human issues. This is not a child's issue or not a person with dementia's issue, and the tactics, the strategies and the tools ought to be the same. And so, being a dutiful husband, I listen to my wife, and she's been the inspiration for much of the good things I've done in my life. And so, we began to talk about what that might look like.
Okay. Linda, when you guys came to have this discussion, was there like one thing that just hit you that made you decide, boy, we have to write this book? Was there a specific story or example that just kind of slapped you in the face?
Well, I think that I kind of heard this from parents. How do we take care of issues at home that we're seeing so they don't spill over into the classroom? And I thought, when people would come up to me after a seminar and ask me questions about conflict, I seemed to always go back into my classroom for the answer. And usually it made sense. So when it kept happening all the way across Darwin, I thought this might be something that I can start helping with Alzheimer's and dementia, a way I could be a contributing factor.
Wonderful. One of the things we should probably clarify for our audience, because many might not know what the Montessori method is about. Can you kind of summarize that so people have a little feel for that? Yes,
it's kind of an individual process. It's independence, order, coordination. Those are kind of the themes. And so it's working individually, but also helping people with their weaknesses and strengths, but starting out with like a basic independence, self-help works, like how do you button your shirt and things like that, and taking care of the environment. The three main rules in a classroom are respect for self, respect for others, and respect for environment. I think that is the values that we worked out of. And you're trying to get a child to be independent, not depending on people, be able to think for themselves, problem solve. That's kind of what the philosophy is. It's working toward independence. All of the materials in the classroom are self-regulating or self-correcting, so that you're not being told this is the wrong way to do it. You find that out for yourself. And so It's a beautiful way of teaching.
And in dementia care, the values are identical: respect, dignity, and equality. Everything is based on that, which is, of course, the basis of all person-centered care. And so the idea is how to create a place to live that any person would want to live in, with or without dementia. So, for example, what makes a home? A home is a place where you have purposeful activity, where you have a role in the family and in the community. You have a reason to wake up in the morning. You have choice. And so how can we create what we call resident-driven communities in memory care? How can we enable residents to choose for themselves what activities they want to do, how they want to greet new members of the community, what outings they want to go on? We also say we give prizes to the staff member who does the least, because it means they worked with the residents to enable the residents to do as much for themselves as possible to take care of their own community. And so we use these Montessori principles of encouraging independence and creating community and apply these to memory care, because these are universal human principles. It's about creating the place we would all want to live.
And part of that, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, is feeling like you belong. You know, when we're independent, a lot of times people can think of that as an isolating factor, but I think, you know, we're talking about being independent so you can be part of a community and feeling useful and part of.
Right, because we create committees, for example. And so everyone has a chance to voice their opinion, but, you know, the committees can decide, for example, where they would like to go on outings and where, you know, they would like to put their energy, what sort of charitable activity they would like to take part in. So you have these people with dementia who are saying, you know, how can we help people who are less fortunate than us? So it's about being able to help each other, to be able to do as much for yourself as possible, but to also have that strong sense of belonging to a community, of knowing who your neighbors are. And so this is the way all of us want to live, and this is what we see as the model of memory care for the future.
Well, you know, I always have a saying, what's good for dementia is good for the world. And everything you're saying really applies. I mean, we need it in our politics right now, I think, you know, just this whole bit about respect for self and others and environment and the dignity and quality and you know, pulling people together. There's so many places in our world right now where we've lost that. It's almost like it was a fine art that we've lost, and we need to develop this skill set, I think, in all areas of our life if we're going to find kind of that peacefulness and joy and that sense of contentment and quality in our life. It's a really, really good thing that you can't really go wrong with it. I mean, it's just what's good for one is good for the others. Anyways, I have not seen, and Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen kind of a negative side to the Montessori model at all. I mean, it's everything I've always seen or heard has been extremely positive and really well flowing.
Yeah. Well, you know, just like in a Montessori classroom, in most classrooms that I was in, we were always multicultural. I mean, there were times when several different languages would be spoken in our classroom, and besides English. So, you know, we were always working to pull children together from different cultural backgrounds because the Montessori classroom I was in, which was pre-K, 2.5 to 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, usually that was their first social experience. So we were trying to help develop that empathy and how to work with conflict resolution in a peaceful manner. And you're right, it's kind of lacking in what's happening today. So our Montessori always believed that there is a way of bringing peace in a world, not just in your little area, but throughout the country. And that's why she always said that she was a citizen of the world.
Yeah, and in our book we also cite Gandhi, who said, you know, peace is not the absence of conflict; it's the ability to resolve conflict. And so that's the whole idea behind, you know, the book, is to give people tools, to give people also ways of thinking in terms of, you know, how do you teach a person to be able to resolve conflict. If they're 3 years old, you know, they may have difficulty looking at the world from someone else's point of view. They may have difficulty initially experiencing empathy, but that may also be true of someone who's 83, who's never heard the word no before in their life, and who suddenly has to live with other people. And so these are skills and these are habits that can be learned and that can be practiced. And when you have an environment that supports this approach and that gives people continual practice using these things and living this way, that's really how most people want to live. They want to be able to feel safe and and not threatened, and to be part of a community. And so, the parallels are there. The other thing we say is that, if we're really successful at creating person-centered care, then you're not going to have residential care for persons with memory impairment. You're not going to see people anymore sitting in chairs along the wall with their chin on their chest. If you have that environment, there's no conflict. But if you have a group of individuals who are expressing themselves and who may not have lived communally for a long time, or if ever, and they have to try to live together, you're going to potentially see an increase in conflict unless you give people the tools they need to be able to deal with differences of opinion, to tolerate differences of opinion as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my friends, Daniela Greenwood, over in Australia, she talks about over there they don't separate memory care. Everyone is just integrated together, and she says everybody has a right to citizenship, no matter what age, no matter what disease they have. They have a right to be part of the community and an active part. And I just think that that's such a beautiful statement, because we have tended to segregate people, and the fear of this disease, and you see it so often even in assisted livings or even market rate. As people age, they don't want to be around those old people, or they don't want to be around those sick people. They discriminate a lot against themselves because there's such great fear, instead of embracing that, we're all going to get older, and we're all probably going to get sick, and we're not going to have a lot of ability to change that. And so, do we want to be the person ostracized, or do we want to continue to be part of a community? And if we want that, why shouldn't others have the right to that as well? And go ahead, Linda.
I was going to say, in a Montessori classroom, that's kind of the reason why it's divided into age groups. Like the 2.5 to 5-year-olds would be together, then the 6 to 9, the 9 to 12. And her thought was, first of all, it was developmentally appropriate, but also the older students were there to help the younger students. And as the year progressed, the 5-year-olds would start helping with lessons for the 3-year-olds. So, it's not just one working through this process. It's the community working through it and helping each other. So I think that's what Cameron's also trying to do with developing communities for dementia and Alzheimer's disease.
Right, because you're spot on, Lori, when you talk about fear driving things like bullying in senior care, and people saying, I don't want to be around those people. And so the question is, how do you get past that? And so it's a two-step process. The first is, trying to teach empathy and let the person who, say, has earlier stage dementia think about how the person that they're taunting or making fun of or trying to ostracize, how that person must feel. How would you feel if you were in this circumstance? And then the second step is, can we find a role so that the person with earlier stage, the parallel is the older child in the Montessori schoolroom, can play a part to help the person with more advanced dementia, and, for instance, lead a discussion group or an activity for a group of residents with more advanced dementia, and be able to begin to see the humanity in these people, not just look for the stereotype, but learn how to look for their strengths and to see that they are still very real human beings and persons with strengths and backgrounds and humor and all of the human qualities that are there waiting to be seen if you want to look for them. And so it's a process, again, paralleling what you see in the Montessori classroom of how do you get past stereotyping, even among people in memory care for people with more advanced dementia, or people in assisted living for people who are in memory care. How do you get past the stereotyping that's been pumped in to our belief system and get past the fear. And the answer is to let people see the humanity, to let people understand that these are persons and that they feel the same way you do when they're ostracized or made fun of or just kept apart simply because of the way they may look or the way they may talk.
Yeah, I think another piece to that too, though, Cameron, is there's the stigma for who we're caring for with dementia. The shell of the body and the end stage that everybody thinks everyone's in, and they don't go from 0 to 100 typically in 2 seconds. And but I think the other side is how we care. We've got to change those words from caregiver, which says I'm giving it all away, I'm not getting anything back, to care companion and care partner, which says I'm in a relationship again, and when I give, I receive, and I will always receive, no matter who I'm dealing with. If it's a stranger or if it's a loved one, it doesn't make any difference that we impact one another. And for me, I've been talking about this a lot lately, and I'd love to know your thoughts, but I'd almost like to see us change from the word person-centered, because I think it's overused and it's kind of melted down into to start using verbiage of being relationship-based, because I think that gets to the heart-to-heart piece, that we are all humans and we all have feelings, and we all the reactions that we see, no matter if it's a child, if it's our spouse, if it's somebody with dementia, it doesn't make any difference. When we don't like someone's reaction, we call it a behavior instead of looking at it as a signal that something is wrong, and this is why they're acting.
Exactly. It's what's called a responsive behavior rather than a problematic or a challenging behavior, because as Yiska Cohen-Mansfield talked about, it's in response to an unmet human need. And you're right, it's all about relationship. That's what community is all about. It's all about relationship and recognizing the humanity in the other person. Linda and I were in the south of France about 2 years ago. We were having dinner with a group of people who were associated with a nursing home group. And a physician who was a medical director, looked at us from across the table and said, is it really possible for a person with advanced dementia to feel happiness and to be happy? And, it's like Linda and I looked at each other, we were stunned, But that's what's out there sometimes. People, the stigma, the stereotype is that, and this is a quote from another, researcher, that the idea that the person loses their humanity as the dementia progresses. So the next day, we were giving a presentation at a conference, and I showed a videotape of a woman with advanced dementia who was learning to play the piano. And the look on her face, the serenity and the joy when she was doing that was just so obvious. And I stopped the video at that moment when she was looking at the camera, and I looked at the audience, I looked at the physician who was sitting in the audience, and I said, you tell me, is this person capable of feeling happiness? And so that's it's about relationship. It's about recognizing the humanity and connecting with that humanity in a good relationship, regardless of the stage of the disease.
Yeah. Well, and some of it, don't you think, is we and it makes me laugh because, people know with dementia, people are going to lose certain skill sets, and words and ability to communicate is one of them. And yet we try to force people to still talk to us and answer in a fashion, and we neglect to utilize our skill set of reading nonverbals from people, because we're so used to texting or communicating with people that we're not seeing. And there's so much. 3/4 of our communication is nonverbal. There's so much that can be read and told to us if we just pay attention. And I think that is so missed nowadays, and it's a skill set, I think, that has to be retaught and brought up to the forefront again. because it will look really different, but we're not paying attention to the eyes and the smiles and the giggles and the, the stance, all of those things that are very, very powerful communicators with this.
Right.
Something I just realized is I don't think I've said the name of the book, which is Teaching Empathy and Conflict Resolution to People with Dementia. That would be pretty important for our audience to know. And a lot of people are probably going to ask the question, I thought this was about teaching care partners or professionals empathy and conflict resolution, but you're actually teaching the people with dementia how to maneuver those.
Yes,
and that's a huge difference from what I think, again, part of it is the stigma. Well, how would they know how to deal with that? They can't be taught anything new.
Yeah, and that's a real negative stereotype that's just not supported by research. Persons with dementia can continue to learn. This is critical. We always say in our trainings, there's an easy test for that. If you work in a day center or in residential care, look at what happens if you accidentally sit a person in memory care in the seat that someone else has been sitting in at lunch.
Yep.
That person comes and says, "That's my seat."
Mm-hmm.
And they learned that location. And they may not remember how they learned it or when they learned it, but it's an unconscious and it's an automatic, it's an effortless form of learning that's available early on in childhood, this location learning, and that's available to people with dementia. And so, for example, you can also learn to go to a place like a peace corner within an environment, which is where you go to settle differences. People have habits, but they can also learn new habits, and they can learn new associations. One example we give is an example from classical conditioning in the book, where we talk about a preemptive nice. So if you have a resident in memory care who hates a staff member for whatever reason, the staff member often feels trapped, and they think, I have to deliver care, but this person is, calls me all kinds of terrible names. What am I supposed to do? So we talk about approaching the person at the beginning and end of each shift, staying out of arm's reach. You look at him, you pay him a compliment. You say something like, I love those earrings, or, you're looking really nice today, and then you can walk away. And that's probably a very different episode than they're used to, and the feelings they have when they get a compliment done repeatedly become associated with the person who pays the compliment. So as we say, it's called a preemptive nice. And they can learn to like you, and they may not remember why they like you, and it simply doesn't matter. You can also learn to like them when they start responding to you in a positive way. And the same approach can be done between residents, where you can get residents to learn to like each other if they have positive associations with each other as well. And so these are forms of learning that are human forms of learning, available to everyone. And so, we again go to that Montessori classroom where you have a puzzle of the pieces are made out of wood. Each is in the shape of a state of the United States. And the children pick up each piece with a little wooden peg, and they put it on its outline for the map of the United States. After they've done it a while, they put the pieces together without the outlines, but they learn to do that. What's interesting, though, is the peg for each piece is located where the state capital is. So for Wyoming, it's in the lower right-hand corner where Cheyenne is. And unconsciously, automatically, effortlessly, the children learn the locations of the state capitals. And so this location learning, like where you sit or where you go if you want to resolve conflicts, where to look if you want to remember the rules of a community, these forms of learning are there early, and Montessori was a genius at using them, and they remain available to people with dementia if we want to use them.
Well, I like just even when you talked about going to the Peace Corner versus time out, time out is a shaming thing, and the Peace Corner is an empowerment thing. Going, you can do this. Let's figure
and the
this
Peace
out.
Corner can be a place where both people go to resolve their conflict, rather than one person, going there. Linda would, have a Peace Corner set up in her classroom, and this was a place where you can go to resolve conflicts. And the key, of course, was that you practice the habits and you learn the habits of peaceful resolution in advance. It's part of the training, part of the teaching, and we can do the same thing in memory care as well. I know Linda had an approach that involved role playing by teachers for how to do conflict resolution.
Right. Every year at the beginning of the year, you wanted to set a tone for the classroom, and we would use role play as the model. Two teachers would role model a conflict, say name calling, and we'd role model it without using the rules of the class. And it would usually have to end up where we were separated. And that's only a Band-Aid. Then we would role model again using our classroom rules for a win-win situation, and using iMessages and coming out with a good solution. Then we used to ask our class which one was better and why. So we role modeled right off at the beginning of the year to set the tone, because eventually we were hoping that they would want to do their own problem solving, do their own conflict resolution. And Peace Corners were used as a help. But what we found was, after doing this for a while, that they were able to develop empathy for each other. And the benefit also was that the conflicts were decreasing. So we weren't finding that we were having to there was no having to do conflict resolution. They were solving their problem along the way, which is where you want to be.
Exactly. Now, Cameron, you talk about persons with Alzheimer's disease and other forms, of dementia being able, to learn, and you talk that there's research to back that up. When you are out in communities and talking about this, what is your response from the general public? If it's staff, I know you had the one doctor that was like, "Is it really possible?" But what is your overall response from people?
Yeah, initially people don't believe it because they've been told a person with Alzheimer's disease or other dementias can't learn new things. And so what we say is, they have to see it to believe it. They have to see people with dementia learning and also displaying competence and being able to, using a Montessori term, normalize and behave like a, quote, normal, end quote, person. And it's only after they see it that you get past that barrier. So in our training, we show a lot of videos. People have to see it. And then we say, and it's not enough for you to watch videos. You have to go back and work with the people that are living there and demonstrate to the other staff what these residents, what these persons who have dementia are capable of doing. They have to see it for themselves. So that's always the key. We say, you have to work a miracle. If you believe a person with dementia can never get better, that they'll only get worse, they can't learn anything new, then when you demonstrate that they can learn and they can improve, that's a miracle, because it's not supposed to be possible. So the good news is it's pretty easy to do using Montessori approaches. And then you hit the second barrier, and that is, well, you can do it, but I can't. So it's all about enabling staff and family members to use the techniques also, and to begin to realize that we are not powerless in the face of dementia. We have many tools. We can enable people with dementia to learn new things, new procedures. For example, one procedure is a thing called a talking stick, which has been used a lot in peace tactics in conflict resolution. It was even used in the U.S. Senate when there was debate about how to keep the government open and how to do a funding resolution. And in the office of Senator Collins of Maine, the people from different sides, the senators, had a talking stick. And the person who holds the talking stick gets to speak, and the other people listen, and then the stick is passed. And what I hear is that they switched to a basketball because they wanted to move the discussions more quickly. But that process of learning how to listen and to not talk over somebody else is a process that can be taught to people with dementia, to children, or even to U.S. senators. I know Linda had a thing called the talking rock. Was that what you used?
Yes. In one dementia setting, we heard that people were using a microphone to pass around. So that was interesting.
Yeah, the microphone wasn't plugged in, but when people held the microphone, everybody else listened to them, and so that was like their talking stick.
Okay. Well, when you said talking stick, I was thinking of Congress using it, and then I was glad you mentioned that because it's, again, it's a tool. It's a tool that's out there. I think. Oh, go ahead.
No, exactly.
And I think it's really important when you mentioned people saying, "Well, you can do it, but I can't." I think a lot of these changes and a lot of these tools are much simpler to use than people believe that they can be. You know, they really are almost things that I think have been ingrained in us, and for whatever reason, we've pushed them aside. And so some of them are like kind of riding a bike, you know, you don't forget how. It's scary if you haven't been on it for a while, and you might feel a little wibbly, but it'll come back to you fairly quickly, because I think the kudos that you get from utilizing these tools, you know, the way they make you feel as an individual, they make you feel like you're a better person, and you, I think, also learn in this process of empathy to enjoy someone else's joy or contentment. You know, it's not just about busyness and tasks. It's really about taking in the whole.
No, that's exactly true. And I mean, there are all kinds of tools like being able to, one of the things we talk about is there's interesting research about walking as a way of reducing conflicts, and creating walking clubs in memory care so that people walk together. And the basic, you know, in our language, there's things like, you know, we're going in the same direction, you know, you're keeping up with me. And so, you know, that's a tool. Another one that Linda and I discovered in some of our other work is to learn how to ask, not just to apologize, but to learn how to ask for forgiveness. To say, not just to say I'm sorry, but to also say, would you please forgive me for doing that? And that's riskier because, you know, you give the power to the other person, but it's also a way of getting like past the conflict and wiping the slate clean and feeling better about each other. And so these are human tools that are incredibly useful and can be learned whether or not you have dementia. You can learn the procedure, and you can learn what to do in the right circumstances. You may not remember who taught you or when you learned it, and that's irrelevant. It's all about being able to have new habits that are designed to promote peace and conflict resolution and empathy, and learning to live by those habits. And when you do, whether or not you have dementia, you have, as you said, you have a better life. You feel better about yourself.
Yeah. Now, you had just mentioned some of the approaches in your book, the empathy, the conflict resolution, the mindfulness we haven't talked a whole lot about, and peaceful environments. Can you highlight each of those, maybe with an example so people can visualize what these are?
Sure. So, for example, to have a peaceful environment, you would have the rules of the community posted, and you would have the community help put them together. So in one community, for example, one of the rules is no insulting another member of the community. If you insult someone, you must apologize or walk away. And so it's about what values do we want to live by as a community? And I've heard instances of where if there's an argument starting to break out and name calling during a discussion during a committee, the committee members will point to the rules on the wall and say, "Watch out! You signed this too," and that short circuits everything. So you have environments like that. You also want to have an environment that reduces conflict. So one reason you have a lot of conflict in memory care is people go into the wrong rooms, and they'll think it's their room and it's somebody else's. So the question is, why does that happen? We always look at why is this happening. And we have another book on that called Hiding the Stranger in the Mirror about why do you get these behaviors in dementia, what to do about them. But one example is we like to use in our training is we ask people if they've ever put their room key in a hotel in the wrong door. And most people have. And then the question is this, is that because you have dementia? And the answer is no, all the rooms look alike. And then we say, well, but if a person with dementia goes into the wrong room, we say it's because they have dementia, but it's the same issue. So, how can we personalize rooms and design environments so that it's easy for a person in memory care to know what room is theirs and what room is not theirs? And so how can we, personalize environments so that you're less likely to have a conflict in the first place because someone goes into the wrong room? Also, can you have staff, as part of their job, give people, residents, practice looking for landmarks and looking for distinguishing features so that the staff enable residents to develop the habit of knowing what to do, knowing where to look, to know what room is yours and what room is not yours. So there you have this blending of a physical environment and a social environment that's designed to enable a person to know where their room is, to avoid conflict in the first place. And that's always the best way to deal with conflict, is to set up situations where you won't have it. We also have a brief section on mindfulness, and I think Linda and I and some colleagues around the world may be putting together a mindfulness for persons with dementia book in the future. But if you think about mindfulness, it's about being able to live in the moment, to experience the moment. I mean, it may be that people with dementia are more capable of being mindful if you think of it from that perspective. Learning how to meditate, learning how to focus your attention, learning how to experience things with, as we call it, which is called in mindfulness, the beginner's mind. These are all habits that are to be developed. And persons with dementia can create new habits. So we're going to be actually giving a presentation at the Michigan Assisted Living Association in the not-too-distant future about mindfulness in persons with dementia. And what's really nice about all of these techniques, including mindfulness, is that if these are procedures and these are habits, and if persons with dementia can learn procedures and learn habits, then it ought to be possible for people with dementia to lead activities and teach habits to people with dementia. So we're also going to be doing some research in the near future looking at mindfulness groups for people with dementia led by people with dementia. And that's how you can sustain something, because they make it their own. So this is, and once again, as Linda was saying, you have older children, giving lessons to the younger children, and everything spirals back to that Montessori classroom.
Yeah. I just had Curdy on with the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation, and they have what is it called? The Curdy Krista. I might be pronouncing it wrong. Meditation, but it's finger movements and then a chant with it, and it's very powerful. It's research based and simple to do. And they might be somebody that you want to connect with on that as well. But there's it's nice to see more of that coming about. And you had said it might be easier for someone with dementia to be more mindful. And I think part of it is what they tell me, anyways. And maybe you hear different, but that they're so tired of their mind being busy all the time. They really appreciate when it's quiet, because
yes,
for them to participate, and a lot of times get bullied because they look normal, they act normal, and people don't understand how much work that is. And so I always tell people, think about when you don't fit in and how uncomfortable that is and how much more that takes out of you. To be part. They're like that 24/7. That's a lot
exhausting.
Exactly. And so Harry Irvin, one of my favorite people with dementia, he has the statement he uses: "I like to relax before I got dementia. I still do. Revel in my peacefulness. It's okay. You don't have to keep me busy all the time." And we all like to rest, but as care partners, we think it's our job to keep people busy, and that's how we get filled, is because we're so task oriented. We get filled by doing something instead of just being, and so just telling people, how many times do you like to just sit next to somebody and not even say a word, but you're comfortable. We forget about those little easy, simple things of being connected. Linda, yes. I'd like to ask you if there's anything you'd like to add about the positioning of the book and how you wrote it. We've got about 7 minutes left here. Anything you want to point out in particular with the book?
Well, just now you were talking about the quiet and peacefulness, and I think that's another thing that we're trying to promote, is that you give the person choice, and that choice is everything. You can choose to do your own activity or be a part of the group, and I think that's important. I think that's it.
Okay. Yeah, it gets back to appreciating the whole person. And how we all like to live. We have our quiet times and we have our busy times, and a person with dementia is absolutely no different than the rest of us. And many times what they tell me is that their other senses are heightened, if they can't communicate as well. So their hearing, their sight, their emotional senses are all heightened. And so I think that's something that we have to be aware of, too, when we are dealing with people and dealing with the environment. So, I'm hearing this.
We
what are they hearing?
Right. We also talk about an activity that's called a thanking circle. And Yitka Zagola, who has written a lot of work on activity for persons with dementia, is the idea behind it. But it's where the community gets together, and again, you have something that's like a talking stick, but when you have the stick, you thank another resident, or you thank God, or you thank a staff member or a family member for something that they did. It could be something like, as simple as, I want to thank Julie for always being so pleasant when she comes to breakfast in the morning, and always having something nice to say. But once again, that is a community building activity. It is a way for people to take turns speaking and turns listening. It's a way to reinforce looking for the good in people. It's a way for looking for what's good in our lives, and to see residents in memory care expressing their gratitude for the good things in their lives and seeing those good things in their lives is very inspiring. And you're absolutely right. There is no them, there is no us. We are all just human beings with our own strengths and our own weaknesses. And coming to realize that is, I think, the key. It's how we build empathy within ourselves for other people as well. And, in our book we say it all starts within ourselves. If we're not peaceful, if we're shouting, if we're acting agitated, it will express itself in the behavior of other people. And so everything starts with taking these ideas and incorporating them into our own being and making our own lives better. And when we can model these things, we can live these values, we can learn and use these habits, we can teach others, but we'll also have better lives ourselves.
Exactly. And I think that is, one of the biggest gifts is, again, getting back to what's good for dementia is good for all of us. And it teaches us to find the peacefulness and the respect and the joy that's right before us that, many times we're not looking for because we've been told to fear something. We've been told to, feel uncomfortable in its presence. And, when we can shift that mindset to saying, hey, you know what, none of us is perfect and we all got our little quirks. and let's be accepting of this and let's learn more about it so that we can all live a better life alongside it, walk with it gracefully. I just think that's so important. Go ahead, Linda.
I think that people are walking on, I feel like they're walking on eggshells when they meet or see a person with dementia, even if their own relative. And my best experience has been just comfortable and talking with people, that they respond to that and feel normal and part of the conversation instead of being talked at. They're being talked to, and I think that's something that that's a barrier. We all need to just relax and talk to them like they're normal people. They are normal. They just have a memory deficit, and just enjoy their interaction and who they are. And I think that's a gift you can give yourself and to them. It's just being normal and letting them feel normal.
Yeah, I'll always remember when Linda and I were working with family members and the persons with dementia, living with them, and Linda was working with the persons with dementia. In one group, I was working with family members, and a woman with dementia came up to Linda afterwards and said, it felt so good to feel normal again. And that's really what it's all about. How can we normalize memory care? How can we give people who happen to have that particular challenge the capacity to feel and to be normal, to have the life that all of us want to live?
Yeah. And laughter is such a big piece of that too, the silliness of life. I think we forget about that. Well, people can go to your website, www.cen4ard.com. Yep, that's CEN4ARD.com, or they can email Cameron at CEN4 ARD.com, and you can pick up the book Teaching Empathy and Conflict Resolution to People with Dementia on Amazon. I'd also like to just mention the Memory Cafe directory. You can find out where one is located near you. Just go to the memorycafedirectory.com. And then also would like to mention the Women's Alzheimer's Movement by Maria Shriver. You can go to the women'salzheimersmovement.org for more information. She should be rolling out her event, Move for Minds, I think the end of this. And thank you all so much for being with us. And Linda and Cameron, again, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Bye now.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Hi, this is Suzanne Newman, host of the Answers for Elders podcast and radio show. We are the North Star that guides you through the complicated journey of senior care with trusted experts in money, law, living solutions, and more. So join us on this station, your favorite podcast channel, or just go to AnswersForElders.com. Meet the Wayshowers who will help your journey go a lot easier.